What medical emergency did Martin Lawrence experience while he was filming Big Mama's House? What other movie was Nia Long considered for before she chose to co-star in Big Mama's House? Why did the creators have to do some creative directing, shooting, and editing specifically for Nia Long? This and more questions will be answered on this episode of
Back Look Cinema, the podcast.
Well, I asked him. I said, Lord, should I talk about the evils of drugs? No. Big Mama don't know nothing about no drugs. Unless you're talking about Harry Belafonte. Whoo! Lord knows I was addicted to that man for about 10 years. So anyway, what I'm here to say is that some of us live secret lives. We don't want people to know the real us. We hide behind our smiles and polite conversation. And underneath it all, we do a lot of nasty shit. Oh, excuse me, Reverend. Oh, so sorry about that. So anyway, we've all sinned. Lord knows I've sinned. I've lusted in my heart, in my living room, in a hot tub at the Red Roof Inn. Ooh, in the back of an El Camino. Oh no, that's neither here nor there. Oh, okay, please disregard that last one. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that our secrets, they eat away at us. So if we want to be protected, hear me now. We got to confess everything, because the truth shall set you free. And when that day happens, oh, won't it be a happy day? Hello, my name is Zoe. It's spelled Z-O or Z to the O for those of you outside of the U.S. Welcome back, friends. This is the 216th episode of Backlook Cinema, the podcast, where we take a look back at the movies of yesteryear, especially the movies of the latter half of the last millennium. If you like what you're about to hear, then tell your family, tell your friends, especially your auntie who looks as suspiciously like a short fat man in drag about Backlook Cinema. Admittedly, I had my doubts about rewatching Big Mama's House. I remembered enjoying it, but as I did the research, it seemed like it wasn't as universally loved as I thought it was. As a matter of fact, upon this rewatch, I had asked myself if I actually watched this movie. I have memories of watching this movie, but when I watched it, I realized that I had no memory of anything that had taken place in the movie. It was like watching a brand new film. I've had issues like this before, rewatching a film and having no memory of the plot of the film, but it feels different this time. I'm thinking maybe my memory of watching the film are false, and that I really remember like the clips that I've seen of the film or the trailers and the film just being in the zeitgeist. This seemed like the kind of movie that I would have watched when it came out. Big Mama's House was released at the height of Martin Lawrence's fame. He was the star of one of the highest rated sitcoms, the self-titled Martin. At the time, along with Tisha Campbell, Carl Anthony Payne II, Tashina Arnold, and Thomas Michael Ford, rest in peace, Big Mama's House, unlike most of the movies that Lawrence starred in, was an extension of the style of comedy that we all loved when we watched Martin, the TV show. On the show, he would dress up as a bunch of different characters like Dragonfly, the inept martial arts teacher, Roscoe, the snot-nosed 8-year-old neighbor, Jerome, the washed-up pimp, and fan favorite and one of Gina's best friends, Shanae. Hattie Mae Pierce, or Big Mama to her family, was another character that Lawrence embodied with amazing humor, gusto, and enthusiasm. It was for this reason that I was sure that I'd seen this and Big Mama's House too. But again, after the rewatch, I'm not so sure. Whether or not I watched it, let's see if it still holds up. But first, the opening credits. Big Mama's House, 2000. Being a top operative in the FBI means being assigned the most challenging and most dangerous cases. Agent Malcolm Turner is up for any challenge, and while tracking down a dangerous escaped prisoner, an opportunity arrives that allows him to dress up as the estranged grandmother of that criminal's ex-girlfriend. It is a wacky and risky plan for sure, but Agent Turner is a master of disguise. Will he be able to fool the criminal's girlfriend, Sherry, into thinking that he's her Big Mama? What about Big Mama's friends, neighbors, or romantic pursuers? Will he fool them? Will Turner be able to survive a week, day in and day out, in a fat lady outfit? Will he be able to keep professional distance and his hormones in check while he's pretending to be the grandmother of the sensually beautiful Sherry? What will happen when the real Big Mama returns to Big Mama's house? This movie was released June 2nd, 2000, produced by 20th Century Fox, Regency Enterprises, and New Regency Productions. It grossed over $117 million in the US and Canada and over $173 million worldwide on a reported budget of $30 million. Now that is outstanding. That is what you want. You want to spend a modest amount of money and reap in the profits. And they definitely did it the right way with this movie. If we adjust all these totals for inflation, then the gross, had it been made today, would have been over $222 million in the US and Canada. And the worldwide gross would have been over $328 million. And the budget would have been $56 million. A winner, any way you look at it. This film starred Martin Lawrence as Malcolm Turner. You may have seen him in Big Boys, the entire franchise. Oh, I'm sorry, Bad Boys, the Bad Boys franchise. Or a couple of the House Party movies. We covered the first House Party movie in episode 214. Or 214. I don't know why I said that funny. He was also in Life, Boomerang, that we also covered. And What's Happening Now. And the reason I'm putting in What's Happening Now is because I used to watch this show all the time. It's a TV show, a sitcom that I watched, syndicated. And I don't remember him in that show. I watched it all the time. I didn't realize. I watched the old clip where he's like prominently featured. He's in like maybe half of the episodes or maybe a quarter of the episodes. And I had totally forgotten, like it's wiped from my memory that he was ever on that show, but he was definitely on that show, prominently featured. This is why when he did Martin, there were members of that show, What's Happening Now, that were guests on the Martin TV show. So, and for some reason I had no context for why these people were. I just remembered that they were on What's Happening Now, but I didn't realize that the reason that they were on Martin was because Martin used to be on What's Happening Now. So yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing how things come together when you get these sudden realizations of things that had happened, the connections that you didn't even know were connected. Nia Long plays Sherry Pierce. And if you listen to the last couple of episodes, she's been in those too. And she seems to, like I said before, have been in many of what we consider the classic Black films of the 90s. And she's also been in some other movies that you may not be familiar with, like Missing, You People, The Banker, or Look Both Ways. Because I can tell you that I'm not familiar with those movies either. Up next is Paul Giamatti. He plays John. And you might have seen him in Sideways, Cinderella Man, American Splendor, and The Holdovers. Jascha Washington plays Trent Pierce. You might have seen him in Enemy of the State. We covered that in episode 154 with Rob Fredette. He has a podcast called Hodgepodge with Rob Fredette. and you might have seen him in Snow Dogs or The Final. As a young actor, I felt like he did a fantastic job playing the disaffected youth in the movie. Terrence Howard played Lester Vesco, and you might have seen him in Hustle and Flow, Crash, and of course, Iron Man. Anthony Anderson played Nolan, and he's been in so many movies, including The Departed, Kangaroo Jack, and of course, Transformers. Ella Mitchell played Hattie Mae Pierce, also known as Big Mama. And Lord Shango was her only other theatrical appearance. She is a renowned Broadway actress who is noted for her beautiful singing voice, which is also used in the film's final scene where she belts out the classic gospel standard, "Oh Happy Day" by Edwin Hawkins. The only other credited appearance that she has was in 2 episodes of Sesame Street. Carl Wright plays Ben Rawley, and he was in Barbershop and Soul Food. I also want to shout out some appearances by Tashina Arnold, Octavia Spencer, and Cedric the Entertainer. This movie was directed by Raja Gosnell, and you may have seen some of his other movies. And the thing about some of his other movies is that they're mostly comedies like Never Been Kissed, Scooby-Doo, Beverly Hills Chihuahua, The Smurfs from 2011, Yours, Mine, and Ours, and Home Alone 3. And some of those were kind of funny, I guess. Most of these, I have to admit, I'd never seen. And when I see the trailers of certain movies like Beverly Hills Chihuahua, I always get the impressions that they're not actually funny, so I don't try to watch them. So, and Scooby-Doo is probably the only movie on this list that I've seen. And to me, it seems like it's kind of funny. Like, it's not all the way funny. It's more amusing than it is funny. It was written by Daryl Quarles and Don Reimer. Quarles, he hasn't done too many films. Some of the films he's done is like Soldier Boys, Boys with a Z, Black Knight, and Wake. And I haven't heard of any of these movies. But Reimer, he's done a lot of animated movies and family-friendly movies. You may have heard of these, like Fernandad, Rio, Surf's Up, or The Santa Claus 2. The music was composed by Richard Gibbs, and you probably heard his music in The Honeymooners from 2005, Fat Albert, Johnson Family Vacation, Love Don't Cost a Thing, I Spy, or Queen of the Dam. Now, I have a couple of announcements. The first is I'm going to start doing more films from the early aughts. That's between 2000 and 2010. And that's because I feel it's been long enough. I think the movies that came out in the 2000s can be considered classic. I think it can offer a measure of nostalgia, even for somebody as old as I am. So I want to start moving into that territory. And for example, Big Mama's House, it's in the 2000s. It's not rare. Like, I've done movies from the 2000s in the past. 2000 used to be my limit, but I feel like I'm going to explore more in that 10-year period between 2000 and 2010. And the next announcement I have is, this is more of a reminder, is that next week I'll be a guest on Movie Lovers Unite. At least next week we'll be recording it. I'm not exactly sure when that movie will be released. I'm not sure when that podcast will be released, but Movie Lovers Unite is a great podcast that I listen to, so I encourage y'all to check it out. And I'll be there on as a guest with John DiGregorio, and we're going to talk about Edward Scissorhands. And I'm excited about this because I've never seen Edward Scissorhands, so I'm looking forward to that. And that's it for the opening credits. Let's check out our favorite parts. So, once again, let's see if we can figure out what the the themes of this movie might have been. One of the themes of this movie, from a professional occupational standpoint, is going above and beyond what your job requires, taking chances, doing the most. That seems to be what Malcolm is doing. And Malcolm and John played by Paul Giamatti, they have to work together, and basically John is being drawn into these schemes. And it's like John is just, he is content with doing like the regular job, like doing a good job, but not doing like the most, like not going above and beyond. Well, Malcolm, he's all about being a superstar agent, and he's going to do whatever to accomplish his mission. So I think that's one of the themes. The other one, I think the main theme, are themes about loyalty and trust. So you have Malcolm and John, they have to trust each other as partners. You have Malcolm constantly asking John to trust him. And John is often being, as I said before, drawn in. And then Malcolm has to work to gain the trust of Sherry. He's undercover. He's pretending to be Sherry's grandmother, and he has to gain Sherry's trust and her son's trust. And by extension, he has to ingratiate himself with Big Mama's friend group and her church and her community. He has to embody Big Mama so that he can be in that group. He has to gain basically all of their trust. There are a couple of people who are suspicious about him, not suspicious that as Big Mama that he's somebody else, but as Big Mama, they're suspicious that Big Mama is doing something untowards. Like they think Big Mama's up to something and they're trying to figure it out. And so you also have the consequences of that trust being broken, especially when Malcolm's identity and his motives are revealed. So that's the thing. Those are the things that this movie explores. I'm going to go over some of my favorite parts of this movie, but the thing about it is that right here and now, I'm going to say that the movie was not as funny as I remembered it or as I thought it was going to be. Like, they had one real funny moments, and the other moments were just kind of funny, or they were just amusing. One of the things about this movie is that, being that Martin Lawrence he's great at playing different characters, especially characters in disguise. They basically wanted to give him a disguise and then put him in different situations that would be funny. So like in the opening of the film, you have this illegal dogfighting ring, and Paul and Malcolm are Paul Giamatti as John and Martin Lawrence as Malcolm. They're infiltrating this dogfighting ring, and John gets found out, and he's actually thrown into the dog pit. And there's a Chinese man, or an Asian man. I don't know if he's supposed to be Chinese, but there's an Asian man who's decided he's going to bet on the game, like bet on the outcome of the dogs attacking John. It's an older Asian man. He gets up. He's confronted by the people who are running this ring, and the Asian man is like, no, I want to bet on that bald-headed man. I want to put my bet on him. And so they're going to release the dogs. And then as they release the dog, the older Asian man starts to fight with the people who are setting up this ring. And in the struggle, they rip off his face, and underneath the old Asian man's face is the FBI agent, a short black man who happens to be Malcolm. And, Malcolm, he's able to defeat the ring, and then the rest of the FBI comes in and they're able to shut it down and rescue John from the dogs. The dogs, for whatever reason, did not actually attack John. They were, if anything, they were really affectionate to John. So that's one of the things. They put it in a scenario that they hope is funny, and wholly relying on Martin Lawrence to make it so. And there are a number of moments like this. There's only one real moment that's really funny. And it's a moment where Martin Lawrence and John, or I should say Malcolm and John, they're in the neighborhood where Sherry's grandmother lives. Now, Sherry is a witness to this. Well, they think that she's involved with this bank robbery. They think that they think that she's involved with this bank robbery because it was her boyfriend that robbed the bank. They robbed her bank that she worked at, and he robbed the bank while she was working there. So they think that somehow she was involved. There was a trial and she was used as a witness and no charges were filed against her. And they were able to put her boyfriend in jail because her boyfriend, not only did he rob the bank, but he murdered a couple of people. And the reason the FBI is after him is because he broke out of jail. And one of the things he tries to do is he's trying to track down his girlfriend because apparently the money that he stole is with her. Now, I don't know if she knows it or not, but that's why he's tracking her down. It's not clear, especially at the beginning of the movie, that she knows that she has the money. At any rate, they go to there's a chance event that happens where they suspect that Sherry might show up at her grandmother's house, even though they have a strained relationship, but she knows that her boyfriend had escaped and is coming after her. And she's escaping not because she has the money, but because she's afraid of him. She doesn't, he done murdered a couple of people. He done broke out of jail. She testified against him in trial. So she's afraid for her life and the life of her son. So she's going to skip town to get away until he's captured again. And the FBI figured that she's probably going to show up at her house, at her big mama's house, at her grandmother's house. So they send Malcolm and John to monitor the house to see if she shows up. But what happens is that Big Mama, there's something that happens where Big Mama has to leave the house for a week. She has to go to another state or another town, and she has to go deal with this situation. And when Big Mama leaves, Malcolm figures that, well, he could just disguise himself as Big Mama. What happens is that when Big Mama leaves, they go into John and Malcolm, they go inside Big Mama's house. The phone rings and Malcolm picks up the phone. It's Sherry. And Malcolm immediately starts to pretend to be Big Mama. It's like John is losing his mind. He's like, what are you doing? He tries to grab the phone from Malcolm. Malcolm grabs the flashlight and shines it in John's eyes to keep him away. It's like spraying a cat or a dog with water to keep him away. And all the while he's impersonating Big Mama. And in this impersonation, he's encouraging Sherry to come over to the house. So Sherry agrees. She's on the way. And so now Malcolm and John has to figure out how to dress up Martin to make him look like Big Mama. And it's funny, right? Because he don't know anything about this woman. They kind of met early on, so he kind of gets her mannerisms and how she speaks, but they only met for a few minutes. So from this few minutes of conversation, they're going to have to develop an entire persona for Malcolm to embody. And the other thing is that he doesn't know her friends. He don't really know the neighborhood. He don't know Big Mama's routine. He don't know anything about her, but he's going to fully impersonate her. usually when you do this type of work, you're going to do some surveillance of the subject that you're going to impersonate for a little while. But Malcolm does none of that. And I guess this is the genius of Malcolm, is that it only takes a few minutes of him being exposed to somebody who he has to impersonate, and then he can instantly embody that person. And actually earlier, because I'm getting events confused right now. Earlier, that is where the funniest part of the movie happens. So earlier, before Big Mama leaves, Malcolm and John, they have to plant devices, listening devices, surveillance devices in Big Mama's house. And Big Mama leaves to go, I don't know, to the store or something. Malcolm and John, they go into the house. They start planting devices. And then they leave before Big Mama comes back. And then she has to leave again. Malcolm decides it's the perfect time to go and plant some more devices. So he goes into the house. Big Mama comes home while he's in the house. It's funny that, you know, the way he's hiding from Big Mama so that he doesn't get caught by her being in the house, and he hides in the bathroom, and then she goes into the bathroom. She has to use the bathroom, and she used the bathroom, and, you know, she's taking a crap and she's stinking up the place. It's disgusting. Malcolm is doing his classic stinky face where, like, he smells or sees something funny or nasty, and he's making that face where, you know, where he's disgusted by his experience. And in this case, he's disgusted by the nasty smell. And Big Mama knows she's nasty and funky. I mean, she's taking a shit. So of course. And so she takes out a spray and she starts spraying the bathroom because of how nasty it all is. She doesn't see him. It's a small bathroom, but she doesn't see him because he's in the bathtub and the shower curtain is pulled. So he's behind the shower curtain. So she doesn't see him. And then she decides to take a shower. So while Malcolm is in the bathroom with her, she starts taking off her clothes. And then she turns on the water. She starts to get into the shower. And then as she gets into the shower, Malcolm gets out of the shower. So she never sees him. And he sneaks out of the bathroom. So all of that was the funniest part of the movie. But it's also got the part that critics had noted. It's like there are some critics that call it, well, it's just a bunch of bathroom humor. And that's really the only bathroom joke in the whole movie. There's nothing else like that in the movie. So it's not a whole bunch of bathroom humor. It's just that that's the funniest one. And everything else is just amusing, not necessarily funny. So like I said earlier, the whole premise of the film is Martin Lawrence in drag and a fat woman suit, just getting caught up in crazy situations. So one of the situations that he gets caught up in is there's a neighbor who is pregnant and she's about to give birth. Like right now, the whole neighborhood basically trusts Big Mama. And so whenever there's a problem, they go to her house in order to address the problem. And so this pregnant woman is about to give birth, and they bring her to Big Mama's house. And obviously Malcolm doesn't know anything about how about childbirth works. And he just wants to call the paramedic, or he just wants to call 911 and just leave. And then, like her boyfriend shows up. Her boyfriend is, at first Martin mistakes her boyfriend for a paramedic, and he wants to bring him over to help with the birth. But the guy is in uniform, but it's not a paramedic uniform. It's a security guard uniform. He's a senior security guard. And so he can't help either. All he can do is call in paramedics or whatever. And her boyfriend is played by Anthony Anderson. This is, Tashina Arnold plays the pregnant woman. And this is more like a cameo appearance from her. At any rate, they're leaning on Big Mama because this woman is about to give birth. So Big Mama being played by Malcolm, because by this time Big Mama is gone. Like she's gone for a week. So it's always going to be Big Mama's from this point is always going to be Malcolm. So Malcolm is just get water, towels, and Crisco, right? And I think John is there at the time, and he was like, man, Black people use Crisco for everything. So he's able to help with the birth, but it's like, crazy situations like that. That was a little bit funny. Not laugh out loud funny, but it was, it's entertaining. Also, I wanted to note that there was a scene where Big Mom was sitting on the porch. He's having a heart-to-heart talk with Sherry. And as they're sitting on the porch, and in this heart-to-heart talk, he's trying to get Sherry to basically give him information, tell him, like, Sherry, even though Sherry is there, she's not, she doesn't want to talk about her past life. She doesn't want to talk about when she was a bank teller and her bank got robbed and that, she testified against her boyfriend. She doesn't want to talk about any about that. And that's what Malcolm is trying to get her to reveal. The FBI suspects that she actually helped him steal the money and that he's looking for the money, that they're in cahoots, and he's trying to get her to confess. But she's like tight-lipped about it. But in this heart-to-heart conversation, they're sitting on the porch, and on the porch there are two metal peacock thingies on the wall. They're like, they're like decorations that you would buy at, I don't know, a home goods store or maybe at Sears. And they're on the wall in the scene. And I'm like, at my house, we had those exact same peacocks when I was growing up. It was, I guess it was a decoration that everybody had to have. Anyway, another scene where you have Malcolm being goofy is Malcolm happens to be out with the family, and I don't know, some kind of way he ends up at this karate training class, and the class is being taught by that same security guard played by Anthony Anderson. His name happens to be Nolan. So he's at Nolan's karate class. And it's really Big Mama and Big Mama's friend group. It's like all of these old ladies that are at this karate class. And and Nolan is really kind of abusing these old women. He's demonstrating these throws and these punches and like really throwing these old women around. And they're asking is like, can't you be more gentle? And Nolan is like, they're not going to be more gentle when they attack you on the street or whatever. So Malcolm, as Big Mama, he volunteers to be demonstrated on by this karate instructor. And, he flips the tables on him. So, it's funny to see a big fat woman flipping and beating up this karate instructor. So that was a funny part. That was good. Also, there was a part where you had Malcolm trying to bond with Trent. He's trying to bond with Trent, that's Sherry's son. And one of the things they do is they go and play, because Trent had been bullied by these kids at the basketball court. Malcolm, as Big Mama, is going to go back with Trent to that basketball court so that, so that Trent can play basketball. He's going to teach those bullies a lesson. And so you had a big fat woman playing basketball with her grandson, with these other kids, doing things that a big fat woman should not be able to do. It was like way more athletic than you would expect a woman of that size to be. And that was, like I said, that was amusing. That was an amusing part. There's also a part where Malcolm visits Big Mama's house outside of his disguise. So he's basically going as himself, but not as a detective. He's basically trying to pretend that he's a handyman or a repairman, and he runs into Sherry. So they try, it's like a part of the movie where they're doing this romantic angle. So he's like macking on Sherry as a man and pretending to be like a handyman. So he's actually taking on dual roles. He's pretending to be a handyman as a man, and then he's trying to pretend to be Big Mama, her Big Mama in other instances. So now he's kind of in a fix. He's in a bind. Like, he's attracted to Sherry. He's always been attracted to Sherry. It's like, even when he's in disguise as Big Mama, he has to control his urges. So it's funny to see him trying to control his urges when he's disguised as Big Mama. That's one of the funny points in the movie. And so he's in a bind because she's a witness to a crime. So he's supposed to remain professionally detached, but at the same time he has this real time attraction to her. So they do things like they spend time at the lake. He's visiting her, and that he's basically courting her the same way a romantic pursuer would court her. So has to balance this courting her and at the same time trying to get information from her. He thinks that being a dude trying to pursue her, he could probably get some information, or it's that she would tell him things that she wouldn't tell her Big Mama. So he's doing it from different angles, but it like I said, it kind of puts him in the bind, and that's where the themes of trust come into play, because he's trying to gain her trust, but at the same time, he's also he thinks that she's a suspect, and he might have to try to put her in jail. Nolan, the security guard, actually ends up finding out that Big Mama is not Big Mama. He finds out that Malcolm, the FBI agent, is impersonating Big Mama with this fat woman outfit. I think he breaks into the house that they're hiding in, and he finds out. And John and Malcolm have to basically shut him up. So they read him in, because Nolan is he's a security guard, but he's one of those people who really wants to be a police officer. So they tell him that if they help with this case, then he could be in the FBI. Like, they'll fast track him as an FBI agent. And he gets excited about this. So he starts to help them out with the investigation, but they don't give him any real assignments. They basically give him like BS assignments to keep him out of the way, but he doesn't know any better. So he helps out with that. Also, you have Cedric the Entertainer as a preacher. I think he plays a preacher a number of times. He's always good playing a preacher, he's not trying to be funny as a preacher. I think his approach to being a preacher is he's playing the straight man to Martin Lawrence's goofiness. So but whether he plays it straight, like, I'd rather see Cedric play a comedic preacher. But in this case, in this movie, he's not playing the comedic preacher. He's playing the straight preacher. And that's because Martin Lawrence is wilding out. So, so in this case, he has to give Martin Lawrence the floor. There was a monologue that I did at the beginning of the show where basically Malcolm as Big Mama gives this speech at the church. And that's another instance of him trying to encourage, like, he's talking to the whole church, but he's specifically, it's a message for Sherry, trying to get her to confess. Because at this point, he still thinks that she has something to confess. Eventually, Malcolm finds out that Sherry had nothing to do with the robbery. Like, what Sherry confesses that she didn't know anything about the robbery, that the key or access that her boyfriend had gotten into the bank was stolen from her. She didn't know anything about the money. And the reason that she confesses that Malcolm as Big Mama, he's snooping around the house the entire time, and he finds this giant chest that Trent had, and he kept his toys in, but underneath the toys is a false bottom, and there's a bunch of $100 bills in there. And then when Big Mama confronts Sherry about all this money, that's when she confesses that, she didn't know that the money was there. She didn't know anything about the robbery. It was something. And and that her boyfriend had stolen her access keys. And then the way she confesses, and because she's confessing to Big Mama and not to like the police or anything like that, Malcolm believes her. And he's like gratified because now he feels like he can pursue her romantically. And near the end of the movie, Lester Howard, or I'm getting names mixed up. Lester Vesco, played by Terrence Howard, he breaks into the house and he kind of takes the kid hostage. It's throughout the entire film, they basically show him in pursuit of his ex-girlfriend, her son, and his money. So throughout you see him near the beginning of the film scoping out her house, and then near the middle of the film getting like a gun and some other things. And then near the end of the film, he's in Big Mama's neighborhood, and in the final act, he's like in the house. So you see flashes of him throughout the movie. And now he's in the house. He has Sherry's son, Trent, and threatening him. It's the kind of threat where Trent doesn't know he's being threatened, but Sherry believes that he's threatened. At the same time, and it's like at the end of the movie, everybody is in Big Mama's house because it's Big Mama's birthday. And whatever emergency Big Mama had, the original Big Mama, the real Big Mama, whatever emergency she had has been resolved. So the real Big Mama, Hattie Mae Pierce, comes back to the house during this surprise party. And so now both Big Mamas are in the house. And at first, it's like they're not at the same place at the same time. But then they get at the same place at the same time. And then Lester shows up. And then there's the huge fight at the end of the movie. And justice prevails. You had Malcolm, half dressed as Big Mama, is able to defeat Lester and subdue him so that he can be picked up by the police and the FBI. But Sherry is obviously disgusted with Malcolm's shenanigans. Not necessarily because he dressed up as her Big Mama, but more like he violated her trust because from her perspective, he was viewing her as someone who was involved in the robbery, and that maybe he was trying to gather evidence against her to put her in jail. So that is what most upsets her. And so at the end of the movie, Malcolm as himself, not as any of his disguises, but Malcolm as Malcolm shows up at her church, and he goes in front of the congregation to basically apologize to Sherry and then they get together and they kiss and make up, basically. I think the ending was contrived, but for whatever reason, the writers felt like it had to end that way. But overall, I would say that the movie was more amusing than it was funny. I understand that the amusing situations that they put Malcolm in a fat suit in, and a long tradition of comedians dressing up in drag and engaging in all kind of shenanigans. It's usually pretty funny. And in this case, it's more amusing than it is actually funny. It's like you'll watch this movie with a smile on your face, but you're not going to be laughing out loud most of the time. At least I wasn't. But the overall story wasn't that bad. The way the story was executed, it wasn't that bad because it's supposed to be a vehicle for comedy. So the story doesn't have to be that strong, but it was strong enough. It made sense. It wasn't like I think only the ending was the most contrived part of it, but otherwise it was fine. It was a fine film. It's obviously not the best comedy that I've seen, but it's not the worst. Yeah, you have a fine time watching this movie. So that's it for our favorite parts. And now let's get over to the trivia top 10. So I get the trivia from IMDb, and This movie was actually kind of short on trivia. So I tried to go to other sources, and there actually wasn't a lot of trivia that was available for this movie. At least not a lot of interesting trivia. So I wasn't actually able to find 10 interesting things about this movie. I found like 7. So I'll show you what I found. And I think one of the reasons is that the most interesting thing about this movie is about Martin Lawrence. So Martin Lawrence fell into a 3-day coma from jogging in warm costumes during summer filming. For any physically active scenes, his fat suit required built-in cooling tubes to help the actor. So that was crazy. I didn't know about this. And I know that Martin Lawrence have had other physical problems when he made different movies. But this has to be the most serious ailment that he has ever had making a movie. That is crazy. Nia Long was in talks to join the cast of Charlie's Angels from 2000. She was persuaded to join this film upon receiving a bunch of roses with the attached note, quote, "Come with us where you'll be the only angel," end quote. While Martin Lawrence spends most of the film encased in latex, Ella Mitchell also required prosthetics. Her nose wasn't as big as Lawrence's and required augmenting to make the similarity between the two, quote, women, end quote, more believable. The final scenes required inventive shooting of Nia Long, who had been shot from the neck up as she was pregnant. And they did an incredible job with that, because even knowing this, when I watched the movie, I at no point suspected or remembered that she was pregnant. Filming and post-production took place over a period of just 5 months, which is practically unheard of compared to most productions of its time, and over 2 years later, where filming, production, and release windows has widened even further to well over a year, if not more in most examples. When Ella Mitchell disrobes in the bathroom, a body double is used. And the last bit of trivia, although set in Georgia, the entire film was shot in California. So the last two I wouldn't consider, the last 2 bits of trivia I wouldn't consider like groundbreaking, but those are things that happen. And now that we've talked about what little bit of trivia we have, let's get over to the critics' thoughts. The critics have it at 31%. The audience score is 57% on Rotten Tomatoes, and IMDb Reviews has it at 5.3 out of 10. And I gotta say, I'm not overly surprised at the score, especially the critic score. Bob Strauss from the Los Angeles Daily News wrote, "Lawrence's exuberant lead performance and occasional contributions from a game supporting cast do make for some hearty howls here and there." And I think that's a fair assessment. John Anderson from Newsday wrote, "The more irritating aspect of Big Mama's House is the feeling of inevitability attached to each and every ensemble line joke." And I can kind of see how somebody would say that. Jay Carr from the Boston Globe wrote, "Farcical adroitness and Martin's ability to turn on the charm keep Big Mama's House perking along." And that, I believe, is accurate. At last, David Elliott from San Diego Union Tribune wrote, "The comic spell that hangs over the plot like a tent of engorging cellulite, and which asks us to dig every corny, contrived, old hat bit of folksy nonsense and jolly raunch that the writers can cram into us." I don't know, that might be overly critical. Finally, Big Mama's House is, at this recording, available on Netflix, but by the time you hear this, it'll probably be gone, but it'll still be available for purchase elsewhere. I mentioned earlier that I had my doubts about Big Mama's House. The next film, I have no doubt. I thought that it was a bad movie at the time that I watched it, but my experience isn't universal. And I found someone who thoroughly enjoyed the next movie that we're going to talk about. The next time you download this show, we'll be talking about an optimistic future from one of my all-time favorite franchises. We'll have a fantastic guest on by the name of Chris from his awesome show, The Saturday Morning Podcast. Even though I use this podcast to talk about my favorite movies, Star Trek V, The Final Frontier isn't one of my favorites, but it's one of Chris's favorite movies. So the next time we'll hear him out, and we can talk about why this film might be better than I originally thought it was. You can follow us on Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, Instagram, and sometimes Twitter at Backlook Cinema. Please contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at friends@backlookcinema.com. Please rate and review on your favorite podcast app. And if you're listening on YouTube, please like or subscribe or leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. One last time, if you like the show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlook Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're gonna be anything, be outstanding.